So traffic at South Africa's borders are expected to surge ahead of the Easter holidays. The Home Affairs Minister, Leon Schreiber, recently introducing new technology aimed at helping the Border Management Authority in fighting corruption and tightening the border security. Let's now explore some of these technology advances and how it will assist as we prepare for the influx of travellers. And joining me now is the Commissioner, Dr. Michael Masiapato. Dr. Masiapato, very good morning to you. Thank you so much for making time for us. The drones, as an example, it's not the first time that the Border Management Authority had used them, considering that there was the trial that you had run previously. Speak to us about how those drones assist the Border Management Authority in ensuring that it's able to intercept illegal border crossings.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Adrian. We really appreciate this opportunity as the Border Management Authority. Yes, indeed, Adrian, the drones becomes a very critical tool in as far as the work of border management is concerned. And that is primarily because over and above the work that we do within the port of entry itself, there is a lot of activity that also takes place outside the port in what we describe as the vulnerable segments on the borderline. So on that particular basis, it becomes very much critical to have some view, from the sky in terms of what is happening in those particular areas. Because basically here we are talking about areas where there are bushes, there are mountains, there are rivers and all of those kind of issues. So you are very much right, Adrian. During December and January festive period, we were also deploying drones. But at the time, those were the drones that we had fairly borrowed through our cooperation with the Department of Agriculture. Yes, indeed, they were able to assist us, particularly during the return leg, in as far as the festive period is concerned, where we intercepted, if you remember at the time, around 58,000 individuals who were trying to enter the country illegally. So even this time around, we will then be using our drones as the Border Management Authority, and this is no longer a trial, but this is the real deployment. So during the exit phase, they will assist us in terms of managing the corridor, but of course during the return leg, more particularly, they will assist us to intercept individuals who would like to enter the country illegally.
Yeah, and I know with the drones, for instance, that they have the technology that is able to pick up body heat. So even if it is in the evening, late in the evening, it is dark, it's able to pick up that body heat. But what about the ability to even see through some, as an example, for instance, trucks and so forth, that we've seen sometimes that people being stuffed in those trucks, whereas on the facade of it, you think maybe this is goods that are being transported, but they're actually human beings inside.
Yeah, no, Adrian, in terms of the deployment of the drones that we are going to be using, and of course, even the ones that we used during the trial, is not necessarily for scanning the trucks in the context you are describing. It is mainly for, looking at the activities in the vulnerable segments from the sky, but also looking into the activities within the port itself, but also analyzing the developments on the corridor, particularly even in terms of the issues of, I would say, traffic flow, into the corridor. Now, the issue you're referring to, a drone requires what you call scanners that are fairly supposed to be deployed in our ports for the purposes of being able to scan whatever that the truck will actually be carrying. And we should be able to use those to be able to pick up if what the people are declaring to customs is indeed what is in the trucks. So in the meantime, we do have the scanners that are deployed by our colleagues from the South African Revenue Service, and we are actually using those for the purposes of those scannings. But of course, in terms of the other ports, we do not have those kind of scanners deployed, and that is where the vulnerability is. However, we do believe as we go forward, Aldrin, that we should be able to get some bit of resources or financial resources going to the future, where we will be able to buy the latest technology that is basically called gamma rays that are able to pick up, even if you stuff like 20 rands, for example, notes inside a whatever rubble in a truck, it will be able to pick that up. So those are the latest technologies that we are looking at, but indeed they are very expensive technologies, and we do hope as we go forward we should be able to procure those with the assistance of the fiscus.
Yeah, but how much money are we looking at here, Commissioner? Because I'm also looking at whether a case has been made, and somebody may argue that a case has been made that some of the technology that has been supplied over the past few months now, since the establishment of the Border Management Authority has at least led to this 215% increase in interception of people attempting to enter the country. So a case has been made, and we know that the country faces a major problem when it comes to illegal migration into the country. So how much money are we speaking about here? And what was the last word that you heard from the political head of the Border Management Authority, but also from government itself?
Yeah, you see, when it comes to a business case, Aldrin, it is something that we had fairly spoken about in length, even at the parliamentary committee, the portfolio committee on home affairs. You will remember our initial request to the fiscus was around 2.9 billion that we had actually required to be able to start the organization, but also be able to procure the technologies required, but also bring in some additional human resources, including just basic issues of your information communications technology. So, but at the time, we were able to only secure 250 million. So, which was very much clear that we were not going to be able to do that. It is for that reason, Aldrin, that in 2023, we had to then approach what is called CARA, that is the Criminal Asset Recovery Account within the Department of Justice, where we made a bid requesting some additional funding to be able to procure some of these things that I'm referring to. And of course, at the time, we put together a bid that was around 500 million, but we were only able to secure 150 million. So that 150 million is what actually assisted us up to this point in procuring these drones, in procuring the body cams, in procuring even the other vehicles for the purposes of doing this work. We call them prison carriers. These are the vans that we put along the vulnerable segments where we put people that we arrest. And this is the same amount that we're actually using to procure the speedboats for the coastal guards that are actually supposed to work on the coastline. So we are currently working on that. But of course, in terms of the current financial year, we have put in a bid again to the Treasury for the next, for the current financial year. And as we know, we do not know as to where we are standing because the budget is still under discussion.
Yeah, 410 million rand out of a 2.9 billion rand that you required. That is far less than what is needed for law enforcement. But then again, it speaks to what the Defense Committee, the Defense and Military Committee has raised around the underfunding of, for instance, the military and the Defense Force. And I want you to speak, Commissioner, about how the underfunding of the SANDF has an effort when it comes to monitoring our borders.
Yeah, no, you are very much right, Adrian. I can just describe, in terms of the distance that has to be looked at, particularly with the assistance of the South African National Defence Force. If you look at our land borders, we are talking about 4,470 kilometers. It is a stretch from Mozambique, then that runs through, obviously, into Zimbabwe, into Botswana, and into Namibia. That is 4,470. In terms of our coastline, we are talking about 3,900 kilometers, again stretching from Mozambique through into Cape Town and up until Namibia. So in that particular context, you are very much right, Aldrin. The financial challenges that we have in the law enforcement state or in the law enforcement space is very much problematic. And that is why the vulnerability continues, and that becomes a problem. I can just give you a typical example, Aldrin. Just in the 44 days of January to December, we've been able to intercept the illicit cigarette to the value of 690 million just in 44 days. But of course, from BMA's establishment, we talk about intercepted cigarettes to the value of 800 million. That is almost $1 billion. So if you were to engage with the people in the tobacco industry in the country, they will tell you about how the illicit tobacco is actually, in a way, deactivating their legal businesses, as it were. So this is a very serious matter, but we do believe that as the fiscus stabilizes, we should be able to be assisted, because the work that we do is very much fundamental for the economic growth of this country.
Okay, and then finally, the body cams as well, around 40 body cams that you'll be using during this period as well. Tell us about how this assists in law enforcement, but also bringing criminals to book.
Yeah, so in terms of the body cams, Aldrin, they will basically be worn by our officials, particularly those that will be deploying into the vulnerable segments on the borderline. So the body cams and the drones are not distinct, they are actually integrated. So the technology that is being deployed by the drones themselves is the same technology that we are actually deploying in terms of the body cams. So the body cams do the recording, but also it serves as a rescue device in terms of our officials being under siege in the bushes, for instance, as they do the work. And of course, additionally, which is the most fundamental part, is that when the drones picks up some individuals crossing a particular area of the borderline, which we describe as vulnerable, it is then able through the control room to alert the officials on the ground and be able to direct them which part on the vulnerable segment they need to go, and then it becomes a targeted activity through which they will be able to go directly to where those individuals are who are trying to enter the country illegally and be able to intercept them. The last thing that I want to say, Aldrin, which is very much important, is that when we do the work without drone capability or even the body cams capability, is that we basically just do patrols in a way in the dark without necessarily knowing where are the people trying to enter in. So the drones is then able to see that and be able to direct us to go into that particular space. But more importantly, we are also able to isolate what we call facilitators for illegal migration. These are the people who will put people in boats. For example, if we talk Limpopo River up north, or they will put people on the mattress when it comes to Caledon River on the Lesotho side. So in that particular instance, Aldrin, we are then able to identify those individuals. When we arrest those, we do not deport them, but instead, we bring them in the country, hand them over to the SAPS, and charge them for aiding and abetting according to the Immigration Act, because those are the people that are creating a lot of problems for us.
Thank you so much for your time. Dr. Michael Masiapato is the Commissioner for the Border Management Authority.